Ethan, Ethan's a cut above all those guys. Everyone, all of us. Um, just the amount of talent in that guy, and the Linda Ronstadt stuff he shot, and just I don't even know where to begin.
Well, the Hey Jude session with the Beatles
Yeah,
is just
yeah,
epic.
no, it's perfect. It's perfect, and doesn't now that I've gotten to know him, and I consider myself incredibly lucky that I do know him, and that I can consider him a friend. I I I now know that he he doesn't have the ego. And that's what I admire in someone, to have that kind of talent and not have the ego, the commensurate ego that you'd assume that someone has. To me, is astounding, because he's talented enough to say "fuck you, world."
And he definitely has a style. I think if you're a rock
I'm
photography aficionado, you can tell what a Neal Preston photo is, or a Henry Diltz photo is, or a Jim Marshall, or
I'm sure
Ethan.
Ethan can shoot anything he's ever wanted to. And I'm not, to be honest, I'm not familiar with his film stuff that he's done. I know he did go into film and commercial directing and stuff like that, but his music stuff is unparalleled.
Now, who are some of the other photographers that
Garrett
inspired you?
Mankiewicz, Garrett Mankiewicz, I always talk about.
One more time?
Yeah, one of the guys I always talk about is Garrett Mankiewicz, who is a British guy, who's another guy I'm proud to be able to call a friend, who shot a couple of very famous sessions with Jimi Hendrix. And there's a very famous photo of the Yardbirds where they're all lined up on a street, and Jimmy and Jeff Beck are in the band, and way in the distance you could see a guy crossing the street in a bowler cap right through like Keith Relf's legs or something like that. Shot a lot of Rolling Stones stuff in the 60s, and just another unbelievably talented and down-to-earth guy. And Stephen Paley is another guy I talked about that day, who's still alive and lives not far from where we're sitting right now. Shot for about 5-6 years. Probably had one of the greatest runs of any photographer ever. All the early Allman Brothers stuff, Laura Nero, Sly Stone, just insane stuff. Genius.
And who would you think was like the quiet one that had a wild side?
Quiet. Oh, rock star?
Yeah. This kind of goes back to public persona versus what they're really like, kind of thing.
Well, it's hard to answer, because if you have a wild side, it's going to be known sooner or later. John Deacon used to be on the road, and they'd disappear for 2-3 days, and they'd never think twice about it. But apparently he had a wild side, but he kept it away from the band or from the tour. I don't know. It's a tough one to answer.
What was he doing?
I don't know. I do know that when it came time for the band, they did the thing after Fred died. They did the thing with Paul Rodgers, and they asked Deacon to come on the road, and he wouldn't. They couldn't get in touch with him. And as I've heard the story go, they were notified somehow by him that he would only communicate with them via fax. They'd send some people knock on the door. You're going to come out on the road, and no answer. Wouldn't answer the phone. So finally, they had to fax him. Will you come on the road? And he faxed back, no. I kind of like that. I like that.
He's definitely making sure that he's out of touch, staying out of touch.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he'd had enough. I don't know how else to put it.
So you got rock and roll stars who have a wild side, but you know there are also rock and roll stars who are family people. Who would you think would be? Who would you point to as like the coolest rock and roll mom you know?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of the rock and roll moms I do know.
Or do you know mostly single?
I know a lot of women in the record business.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's kind of a loaded question. The coolest rock and roll moms that you know, it's like, are they cool if your kid thinks you're cool or if the world thinks you're cool? It could be two different ways of looking at it. So, I'm probably not the right person to ask that question.
All right. Well, what about guys? We know Bruce is a kind of a family guy in a way.
Yeah.
What is that like when you're with somebody that you work with shooting pictures and when they're working and everybody's off. It's all private time.
Yeah, well,
hanging around with the family.
You just become one of the family, I guess. When Bruce was living out here, for a long time he lived out here in Beverly Hills, and I was spending a fair amount of time with him, and it wasn't like Bruce Springsteen. He was a friend and a client, and I've watched their kids grow up, to a certain extent, and yeah, I don't think twice about it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to Bruce's house, but I've never been like that anyway.
It's just part of your milieu.
They're just people, it never really occurred to me. Like anyone else, I'm respectful of not being there when I'm not wanted to be there and being there when I'm wanted to be there, and I don't think past that.
Why don't you grab the book there and crack it open and let's talk about that a little bit more.
And we're can you know what? Can you cut for 1 sec?